let's talk about, what we would think for talent. What would we rank these teams? So we're going to start off, we're going to do our list here.
This was a very difficult list because like every time I would go through it, I'd be like, well, you know what? This team beats this team at certain positions, but then that team beats this team, but is less talented than this team. But like, there's no game to play to figure out like how to actually logically put this list together. So like mine's all over the place. I have no idea.
The way that I crafted this list, by the way, it's the top 10 most talented teams in the NFL. I crafted this list as who has the most balanced 22-man starting roster. Who has the teams that they have to be great at a lot of positions. But if you have a really big weakness, that takes you down a couple of pegs. If one player is better than another, that might be the difference between one spot in the rankings. A quarterback does not make you the best, most talented team in the league.
No, that's the whole point. You're stripping away coaching and you're stripping away the quarterback being so good to the point of like you're looking at the whole team.
Yeah.
And I'm also looking a lot. I also looked a lot at depth. So like certain teams that I feel have good starting rosters, like I'll give an example. The Rams, I feel have a good starting roster, but I don't feel they're one of the deepest team in the NFL. They still might be on this list, but they might not be as high as a different team because their depth isn't as good.
Agreed. So I have certain, their quarterback might help them. Their quarterback might be amazing, but I think you're going to see a quarterback early on in my list that's really great. That isn't going to be, their team's not going to be high up because they have a certain weakness. So you never know. I'll let you go first. What do you got at number 10?
Man, this is tough. I have the LA Rams.
Hey,
spoiler at number 10. So the LA Rams, of course, they have Todd Gurley. They have a trio of wide receivers that I really like. Tight end play, I feel, is fairly underrated. The offensive line, I do think, has taken a hit, but they do have Andrew Whitworth at tackle and Rob Havenstein at tackle as well. That's one of the better duos at the tackle in the NFL. Aaron Donald on defense, I still feel Aqib Talib, John Johnson. These players are good. Who else? Littleton, I think, is an underrated linebacker. They have a lot of talented players, Eric Weddle, but I do feel like the Rams, especially going into this season, have a lack in depth in certain areas, especially on the defensive line, especially on the offensive line. So Rams are a very talented team, but I also do think they have one of the better coaching staffs in the NFL with Wade Phillips defensively, Sean McVay offensively. So that kind of gives them a little bit of a minus. And again, the depth is a factor. I think the Rams are still very talented, but to me, they're just not in the upper echelon of the most talented teams in the NFL.
Well, great minds think alike, because at number 10, I have the Los Angeles Rams. I really like, some of their pieces that they have together. But again, I think the depth and also a fact they've got a lot of older players playing alongside is a little bit questionable. Andrew Whitworth, like you brought up, Aqib Talib is in his older years as well. I do think they have a really solid receiver trio, if you will. Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp, and Robert Woods, I think, are a great trio that I would like to have. Jared Goff is, a little average, maybe a little bit above. I don't think he's the greatest quarterback in the world. They also have guys like Clay Matthews and Eric Weddle. Clay Matthews especially is kind of not that great anymore. Eric Weddle is still decent and fine, but I think it's more due to the depth. I still think it's a talented roster that clearly just went to the Super Bowl. So I couldn't not put them on this list. But in terms of what they're doing for the future, there are some key pieces that they do have that they'll be ready for the future. But other places, they're going to have to go and look for stuff because they're going to have to figure that out pretty soon.
Just take a look at their depth, like on defense, just for example. So let's look at the first player as a backup on their depth chart. And I don't think any casual fan of the NFL would know a single one of these players. John Franklin Myers, Sebastian Joseph Day, Greg Gaines, Trevon Young, Justin Lawler, Mika Kaiser, Dakota Allen, David Long, Traven Howard, Taylor Rapp, Troy Hill, and Dante Dion. I don't even know. That's his name. Sorry. But yeah, those are the first backup player of all of their positions defensively.
Yeah, that's no bueno. Like, nobody's going to know who these people are. They don't even know the positions. So
then again, like, they're in the top 10 because you look at their starting lineup: Michael Brockers, Aaron Donald, Dante Fowler, Corey Littleton, Clay Matthews, Marcus Peters, John Johnson, Eric Weddle, Aqib Talib, Nicole Roby-Coleman, Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, Rob Havenstein, Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp. So they have a lot of talent in the starting 11. That's where I think they'll have issues this season is if they get hurt, they're going to have some issues.
Todd Gurley. All right, number 9. What do you got?
At number 9, I have the New Orleans Saints. This might be a little bit surprising, but I do feel like the Saints are a good, solid roster, but I do think they benefit a ton from having some superstars on their team like Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, Drew Brees, and defensively Cameron Jordan, and then also having one of the better head coaches in the NFL, Sean Payton, and a pretty good defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen. They have a pretty talented offensive line, especially their tackles, Teron Armstead, Ryan Ramczyk, Jared Cook is a good player. Sheldon Rankins is a good player. Demario Davis is a good player. Marshawn Lattimore. Outside of those players, they're kind of average everywhere else. Malcolm Brown, Marcus Davenport, AJ Klein, Von Bell, Eli Apple, Marcus Williams, PJ Williams. These are all average players. I'm not saying they're bad, but they're not great. Andrus Peat, Eric McCoy, Larry Warford. Just go through their entire rest of their roster, especially their receiving core behind Michael Thomas, the interior of their offensive line, the interior of their defensive line, their corners behind Lattimore. All these players are, I think they're all starting caliber NFL players, and they actually have pretty good depth, which is the reason why they're a spot ahead of the Rams, but they're not fantastic starters. I think the Rams from a starting roster perspective have a better starting roster, but when you go outside the starting roster, the Saints have a little bit more depth, so I gave them the slight edge.
Well, we're 2 for 2 because at number 9, I have the New Orleans Saints, surprisingly enough. You look at their roster, it's still really packed with great names that a lot of people will know. Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. They added Jared Cook, and I think adding Latavius Murray was a nice addition from the subtraction of Mark Ingram. So that helps out Alvin Kamara in a way. They also have a really good kicker in Will Lutz, which definitely helps them out a little bit. Their defense, I think, is kind of what takes it a little bit for me. You mentioned those linebacker groups, and I think they're average. They're decent players, nothing special to me. Marshawn Lattimore is a standout in the secondary, but other guys play the role well, but not tremendously well. Cam Jordan's obviously the big standout in the defensive line position. And then you got a really good offensive line, in my opinion. Some really standout stuff here, but in terms of the depth that some of these other teams have, again, it's just one of those things I couldn't put them that much higher. And plus, I think Drew Brees is going to take a step down, which also hurt me from putting about 1 or 2 spots ahead of another team. So I like the Saints. I like what they do. I still think they're a playoff caliber team for sure with the talent that they do have here, but I think number 9 is a solid ranking enough.
Coming in at number 8, I have the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, I feel like, have a very talented roster, and part of their problem is, I don't know, team chemistry. They have some supreme weaknesses last season. The offensive line was one of the worst in the NFL, which kept them back from being a playoff team, but they were still a good team last year. I think this season they're a borderline playoff team, but I feel like they have the talent that makes them kind of get to that level. But I don't necessarily know about the coordinator on offense, and that's kind of been an issue the past couple of seasons for them since losing Shermer to the Giants. Looking at some of their big players, Dalvin Cook, I think, is going to have a breakout season this year at running back, but they lost the depth at this position. No Latavius Murray. Kirk Cousins at quarterback, pretty good player, not elite, but a good player. I think the offensive line improved this offseason by adding Garrett Bradbury and Josh Klein. They added another tight end in Irv Smith Jr., so adding depth there. They still haven't added any depth to the receiver position, like quality depth. They still have Thielen and Diggs, though, which is arguably the best combination in the NFL. Daniel Hunter, Linval Joseph, Everson Griffin, Anthony Barr, Eric Kendricks, Harrison Smith, Xavier Rhodes on defense. Some of these players didn't play to their peak potential last season, which is another reason why they regressed as a football team. Everson Griffin, Anthony Barr, and Xavier Rhodes, for example. But they still have some pretty good players. But just like some other teams, they have some weaknesses in terms of depth. I think they have a weakness in terms of depth at wide receiver, at running back, depending on Alexander Mattison, offensive line, obviously, and a little bit at defensive end. And really, they have good depth at corner. But overall, they're a good, talented team. I think they're around this area. You could argue whether they should be a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, but they're definitely on this list for me.
Surprisingly enough, they're not on my list. I did not include them on this list. As an honorable mention, I will say, but I do not have them. So it guarantees that one of my teams will not be on your list either.
And it just shows you that the difference for me between talent and actually being a good football team, there's a little difference in there.
Yeah. All right, number 8 for me, I have the Indianapolis Colts, one of the teams that I have to be the favorites in the AFC this year. I really like what the team has brought last year, and I think they're going to get even better. Of course, I mean, Andrew Luck is amazing. I've already talked about him enough. I think their running back talent is pretty underrated. I like Marlon Mack. I like Nyheim Hines. I think they're both pretty good. Their offensive line got a lot better. Quentin Nelson, I mean, he's not his Madden rating. Let's just say that. He's a lot better than his Madden rating. Their defense was quite underrated last year. I really like that. Of course, their addition of Darius Leonard was great. Pierre Desir, a great cornerback as well. And then the addition of Eric Ebron on offense at the tight end position really helped them out quite a bit. I think it's a little bit of interesting situation they have with their team. Is Devin Funchess going to work? I'm not 100% sure. They got a couple of other rookies that are going to help out this team a little bit. I'm just curious to see how this kind of goes and see if the Colts can do it. I really like what they got. I feel like 8 is a good ranking for this team, so I have them here number 8.
At number 7, I may shock some people. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
I have the Kansas City Chiefs.
Whoa! You didn't shock me because I'll tell you in a second, but go ahead.
Okay. The Kansas City Chiefs obviously have a very talented offense, especially at the skill positions. They have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback, who's arguably the best in football. They have Travis Kelce, arguably the best tight end in football. They have Tyreek Hill, obviously one of the best receivers in football. Sammy Watkins is a quality number 2, not a number 1, but a number 2. McCole Hardman adds a little bit of depth there. I actually think he'll be a quality player for them right away in that role. I didn't think he would be as the Tyreek Hill replacement, too much pressure there. But as the number 3, I think he'll fit in well. And also DeMarcus Robinson is a good number 4. Eric Fisher is decent at left tackle. Mitchell Schwartz is probably the best right tackle in the league. It's between him and Lane Johnson. The rest of their offensive line, I like the doctor there, but I don't. Cameron Irving and Austin Reeder, I don't think are anything special. They're okay. Defensively, I did like the addition of Alex Okafor, even though he's essentially replacing Justin Houston. Well, Frank Clark is an upgrade, in my opinion, from D Ford. Chris Jones is an absolute monster. Breland Speaks, I think, is a little underrated. They added Emmanuel Ogbah as well. So I think the depth of their D-line is better than last year. But where I have the issue is I think their starting linebackers aren't great. Like they signed Anthony Hitchens to a big contract, and he hasn't really worked out so far. Reggie Ragland is just okay. He has a lot of deficiencies in his game, like playing in coverage, playing in space. Tyrann Mathieu is a huge upgrade to their safety spot. I like Thornhill as a rookie, but he's a rookie. And the corner spot, I mean, Kendall Fuller is their best guy, but he's their slot corner. Outside of that, Bashad Breeland, I don't think is a starting corner in the NFL. I don't think Charvarius Ward is a starting corner in the NFL. So their corners are very weak. So they have a big deficiency there. And overall, I just feel like the Chiefs, they have some superstars on defense and they have some superstars on offense, but there are a little bit of weaknesses that not a lot of people actually talk about. So that's why I have the Chiefs here in the middle of the list.
Number 7, Kansas City Chiefs. Didn't surprise me on that one. I
can't believe we have so many of the same.
Right? The same ranking. For me, the reason I had them at number 7 is because I have 2 big problems with their team. I think their offensive line has a couple of big holes, and their secondary is not very good. Let me explain in a different way than what Mitch said. Of course, you got Patrick Mahomes. You got Tyreek Hill. You've got all these flashy players, and I love that. I love having that. You get a spot on this list because you have that talent. I'm sorry if the lighting's really bad. It's just kind of the sun beaming off me. But you got really good players. You got really great talent here, and I think there's going to be some really good additions. Frank Clark was not on this team last year. He's going to help that defensive line. You know my boy, solid Chris Jones. He's going to get it done. He did a great job last year. Tyrann Mathieu is a really cheap and great addition that I didn't think they expected to get. So well for them. But besides Mitchell Schwartz, I mean, there's kind of just like this lack for me in this offensive line, which I didn't, with Morse gone, I think it's going to be a big question mark for them. And then for the secondary, like besides Tyrann Mathieu, like what do you got there? And like you also said, linebackers. I'm not a big fan of Anthony Hitchens. Wasn't a fan of him as a Cowboy. I don't think he's going to be that great in this system with the Chiefs. He didn't do that much for me last year, so I don't know if he's going to do that much this year. You get on this list because you have great talent if you got it, but depth is a key issue, and maybe some other big places that are going to hurt you on here. So if you don't have the greatest secondary in the world, I got to bump you down. And there's another team in the same division I got a little bit higher because of the depth we got here. So number 7, Chiefs, really still like their team, but a little bit of big issues for me.
All right, so we're at number 6.
Number 6.
At number 6, I have the Cleveland Browns.
The Brownies.
The Brownies. All right, so the Brownies, they have OBJ, they have Jarvis Landry. I even like Antonio Callaway and Rashard Higgins at wide receiver. I think it's one of the best wide receiving groups in the NFL. Offensive line-wise, Batonio and Treader are pretty good. But outside of that, Chris Hubbard's okay, but he struggles to stay healthy. I am concerned about their left tackle play with Greg Robinson and their right guard play. David Njoku is pretty good, but has yet to really break out. Demetrius Harris is pretty good backup tight end. Baker Mayfield is Baker Mayfield. Nick Chubb, and where is he? He's not even on this list, but Kareem Hunt, Duke Johnson. This is the best running back group in the NFL if you kind of talk about depth. Not the best starting running back in the league, but they have 2 starting running backs and a very good pass catcher. Defensively, Myles Garrett's a monster. Sheldon Richardson, I feel, is overrated, but he's still a starting caliber player. Ogunjobi is kind of underrated, could break out this year. Olivier Vernon is a beast. Not as beastly as Myles Garrett, but he's still an upper echelon defensive end. Depth-wise, I don't love their depth on their D-line. I think, Avery could be a good player. He's still young, but the rest of them I'm not sure about. Linebacker-wise, Joe Schobert and Christian Kirksey are good starting players. The rest of the backups at the linebacker position are mostly rookies or young, unproven players. Denzel Ward is a top elite corner. Morgan Burnett, or at least will be. Morgan Burnett's too old. He's not very good. Demarius Randall is okay, I guess. Greedy Williams could be really good. There's a question there. The rest of their corners, though, like if Greedy Williams does not turn out to be very good, that's where they're going to have a problem because they don't really have anyone outside of that. Like I think they'll struggle in defending the slot. Like is TJ Carey going to be their slot? Is Terrence Mitchell going to be their slot corner? Not a lot of depth on defense, or at least proven depth, but they do have some really good players on defense, and their offense is obviously going to be electric. But again, I think Steve Wilkes defensively will help them from a coordinator standpoint, and I think Freddie Kitchens being their head coach will help them from an offensive standpoint. I think they could have good coaching. It's kind of, we'll have to see how it works out, but superstars help for the Browns. I think they're just about the same as the Chiefs because they have a similar makeup of their team because they had the same GM basically. But, both are very good teams. Both are electric teams. Both are made the same way.
How are we're getting the same list?
You're copying me.
I'm not copying you. I have these lists together. Number 6 is the Cleveland Browns. I gotta explain it a different way here. A lot of really great, when they built this team in the offseason, they're like, all right, we got to get these pieces together. This is terrible lighting. This is really pissing me off. But like they got to get these pieces together. We got to do a bunch of things, and here we go. So they decided, okay, let's go grab OBJ. Okay, one of the best receivers in the game. Cool. Olivier Vernon, let's get him too. Amazing. Baker Mayfield, he's our quarterback. He's our number 1 pick. He did amazing in 2018. I think he'll do great in 2019. Myles Garrett, the number 1 pick in 2017, is going to go up. Denzel Ward had a really underrated 2018 campaign that is still going to be playing. Nick Chubb, I mean, he's still a great running back. You've got other talent there as well. Jarvis Landry's not my big, I'm not the biggest fan of him in the world, but maybe that connection with OBJ will do something with him. Kareem Hunt, when he gets there halfway through the year, will still be pretty well. Sheldon Richardson, he's good, not great. His prime years are past him. And that's my biggest question, is that defensive line. I do like Larry Ogunjobi, but besides that, you got to be questioning it a little bit, and maybe that's going to hurt them getting pressure. I still think their secondary is really nice. It's a young team. I mean, you look in terms of the talent that we have here, I don't think any of the guys that I mentioned besides Sheldon Richardson are over the age of 30. So, this is a really young, impactful team that can go out there and get it done, and they still got plenty of years to go if they keep this group of guys. I don't know what they feel about how this year's going to go, but they definitely feel like they're playoff contenders. And I think with the guys that we just mentioned, they have a chance to do something. So it's a really good starting caliber lineup. There's a little bit of issues in the defensive line for me, but with all the names I mentioned, had to be on this list. I think 6 is a fair spot, even though we both think it's a fair spot. So there is my number 6. Now, when you got a number 5, let's pray to God it's not the same as mine.
At number 5, I have the New England Patriots. This is because coaching is kind of taken into account, and obviously, I didn't know if you knew, but the Patriots have the greatest coach of all time. So, and they also have like a top 3 offensive coordinator. So taking that into account, I think that factors into this ranking. Maybe people would think they'd be a little bit higher. Maybe, I don't know. But looking at their offense, I do think they kind of have unproven aspects to it. Like Isaiah Wynn, even though he's a first-round pick, is he going to be like a stud left tackle? Maybe, probably with the Patriots, but who knows? The rest of their offensive line is like arguably the best in the league. Julian Edelman, of course, is their number 1 receiver, but is N'Keal Harry going to be their number 2? Josh Gordon's not currently on their roster, so it depends if you add him there. Philip Dorsett's a pretty decent number 3. Demaryius Thomas is coming back from injury. Who knows what he's going to be? Other depth receivers like Braxton Berrios, who knows if he makes the team. Maurice Harris actually looked good in camp, but we'll see. Ben Watson at tight end, I feel like he's a starting caliber tight end still in football, but he's definitely not amongst the top like Gronk was. And Matt Lacoste is like a decent second tight end. Tom Brady's obviously a top 3 quarterback in the league. Sony Michel is definitely a good running back, probably in the top 15. James White is arguably the best pass catching back. Damian Harris is a good, nice rookie to have as depth, same as Rex Burkhead. James Devlin's arguably the best fullback in the league. The defense is interesting because a lot of this is coaching. Like, I don't know how great these players would be is the ultimate question if they weren't on the Patriots, but they could be good. Who knows? Some players turn out to go to other teams and they play really well. Some players, they only can perform in New England. Michael Bennett, I think, is not much of a downgrade from Trey Flowers. I actually think at this point in his career, he's underrated, but he's basically their best edge player. Dietrich Wise is okay. Like, Chase Winovich is a promising rookie. John Simon, same thing. Like, he's an okay player, but like, how great is he elsewhere? Mike Pennell is very solid for the Jets as a run stuffer. Danny Shelton, same things, run stuffer. Lawrence Guy was really good for the Patriots last year, underrated player. The thing about the Patriots defense is they have more depth than superstars. Like, you'll go down their list of players. They have like 3 at every position where you're like, wow, these are good players. Like, none of them are like fantastic, but you're like, wow, this is good. Outside of Stephon Gilmore and Devin McCourty, really. Dante Hightower and Kyle Van Noy are very good linebackers, but like, you wouldn't put them in the top 10 in the league. Alandon Roberts, Juwan Bentley, Jamie Collins, like really good depth at this position, but again, nothing like fantastic. They all fit a role. They all fit the scheme very well. Jason McCourty, good corner, not fantastic. Patrick Chung, good safety, not fantastic. Jaron Harmon has his role, very good in it. Stephon Gilmore, superstar corner. Like, they have the best, arguably the best secondary in football. I would say they're probably the best, or the Ravens. JC Jackson's really good. So like, they have a really depth loaded roster, like even more so than in years past. I feel like this Patriots team, like, just down the roster. If they had injuries, I don't think it would be much of an issue going forward into this season, but just it's that superstar quality that they are lacking a little bit. So Patriots are here at number 5.
We don't have an agreement. Let's go. Because they'll be on later on my list. Number 5, I have the Los Angeles Chargers as my room
Okay.
kind of gets darker, and I'm happy about that. Yeah, Los Angeles Chargers. There was like a thing going around that who has the 5 best players, 25 or under. And arguably you could say the Chargers. I would say Cowboys, but you could say the Chargers 100%. We look at the talent that they've got here. You got Derwin James, who had a breakout 2018. Madden might not agree, but
No, Madden hates him.
Madden hates him. We love him because he did a great job in 2018. Keenan Allen gets disrespected once again, but he is one of the most underrated players and does a great job at what he does. I mean, honestly, his 89 ranking is absolutely ridiculous. Melvin Gordon, who we'll be talking about later on with this contract situation, is a running back that's in the top 10, in my opinion. He does a lot of great stuff. He's very versatile in his game. Melvin Ingram. What can I say about him? I mean, he's fantastic. And then Joey Bosa. Those two guys going together, that should scare every single team on the planet. And then you've got some other pieces that really help out this team as well. Of course, Phillip Rivers. I guess if you're the 3rd best quarterback in this game, okay. But still, a really good Hall of Fame worthy quarterback that knows what he's doing. And can you not put him on this list at number 5 just because of his expressions? I mean, that's what I really want to see. But outside of that, I think their offensive line is really well. Like I just said, the defensive line is crazy. You've also got Hunter Henry as the tight end, who didn't get to play a lot last season. He'll come back in here in 2019. I think he'll do pretty well. To me, it's all about what they have as a central unit. Again, like I said with the Browns, all these guys are really young. The Chargers are almost even younger. So, I like that youth. I like that potential. I like what they've seen as it's already gotten lighter. Jesus Christ. But, it is what it is. I think the Chargers are really set up for the future. The reason I put them at number 5 is because every time I say that they're going to do really well, they fail me in the playoffs. So
is that coaching or players, though?
Well, I think it's a combination of both.
Okay.
You're set in this situation. I think you gotta get the job done.
All right.
So I like the Chargers. I really like what they got, but I got to put them at number 5. I think that's their max limit for me. So there you go.
All right. At number 4, I have the Chicago Bears. Yeah,
right.
Chicago Bears are loaded on both sides of the ball. I do think on the offensive side of the ball, where it hurts for me is they don't have a superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have really good players like Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Anthony Miller, Cordell Patterson, Riley Ridley. It's like 5 receivers that are good. Charles Lanoy, Cody Whitehair, James Daniels, Kyle Long, Bobby Massey. Solid offensive line, but you would not call any of those players top 5 at their position. They're all good players. Trey Burton, good player. Mitch Trubisky, pretty good player. Tariq Cohen, good player. Mike Davis, solid. David Montgomery, solid. Like, they have a lot of solid. It's like the Patriots on defense, except on the other side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Then you look at the defense. Okay, this is where it changes a little bit. Akeem Hicks, one of the best D tackles in the league. Khalil Mack, obviously one of the best defensive players in the league. Kyle Fuller, really good corner, like top 5. Eddie Jackson, top 3 safety. So they have top at every position on defense. So that's a big deal. And then you look at the supporting cast. Eddie Goldman is a very good nose tackle. Roquan Smith could be a superstar player. Danny Trevathan is a pretty good player, like close to top 10 inside linebacker. Leonard Floyd's a good player. Clinton Dix is a good player. Prince Amukamara is a good player. And then they have some depth, like just behind that on the defensive line at the linebacking core. Every position has good depth on defense. Like, there's a reason why the Bears defense, not only coaching from Vic Fangio, but playmaking wise, they were a good defense last year. So I just like the Bears. I don't think they have one hole on their roster necessarily, which means they're a top 5 most talented team.
I got to agree. They're not number 4 for me, but you'll see them here. Number 4, New England Patriots. I'm higher on Mitch's team once again.
Well, I can't show my bias, bro, because then I'll get comments. You're just a biased Patriots fan.
As the Wes Welker jersey sits beside you. No, I'm just kidding. At number 4, I got the New England Patriots. I don't know if you guys realize this, but this team's pretty good. They usually do pretty well in the playoffs. They've won a couple of championships. I know that has
but they cheat, Dylan.
But
they cheat.
But they cheat. Oh, of course. Well, I got nothing to say that because whatever. I'm not going to convince those people because they're dumb. If you look at this team, they got a loaded roster, and I think it's just a lot of guys that do this job well. Maybe it's because of the scheme that they're in, but I really like what these guys bring to the table. First off, I mean, do we even need to say about Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time? But then I've got two great running back talents. Sony Michel, who Kev put on his underrated list, and if the stats show, he was kind of underrated last year. He did a really good job. Jesus, this light's killing me. He did a really good job in 2018 in his rookie year, put up over 1,000 yards. I really like his production. I thought he did pretty well. And James White, one of the most underused guys for his offensive scheme. I mean, this guy can kill you wherever he needs to go. He doesn't need to run. You throw in the ball, he's going to go off like crazy. Offensive line, I think, is pretty good, pretty solid. Oh, and of course, your receiver-wise, Julian Edelman. I mean, it's great. You're going to have to replace Gronk. That's tough, but I think they've got two solid enough tight ends to get a decent amount of production. And plus, I mean, if you look at what they just won the Super Bowl with, they didn't really have Rob Gronkowski. So if you even play the role decently enough, I think you can, even it out, I guess. Defense has got a lot of really good guys, and I don't think a lot of the mainstream NFL fans would know. But if you look at what they do, you definitely see the production there. Kyle Van Noy, I really like. Devontae Hightower is great. The secondary with Stephon Gilmore, I was really, really impressed just looking back at some of the highlights. And I'm like, wow, this is the top tier guy that could have been, I think, should be the number one cornerback rated in the league. So they have a lot of this great talent there that you just kind of have to look at. And maybe it's the Patriots scheme like we talked about, but if you're doing well, you're doing well. It doesn't matter what scheme you're in. So I got to look at that production based on that. So I think the Patriots, I think it's good here at number 4.
All right. At number 3.
Top 3 here.
I have the LA Chargers. The Superchargers. Okay, so the thing about the Chargers is, from some people's perspective, when you think of talented football rosters, you will say they're the best because the names that come to your head. Like, all the important positions in a NFL fan's mind is what the Chargers have. Mm-hmm. Okay? You just look at their flash, like Madden positions. Okay, what do you want on a Madden team? You want a quarterback, a running back, a wide receiver, a tight end, and then you want corners, defensive ends, and that's what they got. And a safety. All right? Chargers, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams at wide receiver with Travis Benjamin. That's an added bonus. Phillip Rivers, Melvin Gordon. You throw in Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. Pretty good there. Tyrod Taylor is a backup. Sure, why not? Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, one of the best duos is pass rushing duo. Then you look at the corners, one of the best corner groups in the league. Casey Hayward, Trevor Williams, the all-pro himself, Desmond King, Michael Davis even. And then the safeties, Derwin James, superstar, Adrian Phillips. They drafted Adderley as well. And then some of the depth players are actually pretty impressive as well. Nwosu at linebacker / defensive end. They added Thomas Davis to the mix. They have Denzel Perryman, Jatavius Brown, good players. They drafted Jerry Tillery. They still have Brandon Mebane, who's a name, so people will like him. Then you got Hunter Henry. The biggest issue with this roster is the offensive line. Mike Pouncey is good, and I think Russell Okung is still pretty good. But the rest of the offensive line, I feel like still some weakness there, especially at right guard. If Forrest Lamp can step up, that this unit can improve. And right tackle is a little weak too with Tevy. But I mean, they have the superstars, and they hit the notes of what you want on a kind of like an all-star team, so to speak. So they get that aspect of it. And I just want to see them kind of improve as a football team in the trenches. That's kind of like an area of weakness that we saw be exposed from the Patriots and a little bit with the Ravens as well, even though they did win that playoff game. Like, if they can get better up front on the offensive and defensive lines in terms of stopping the run, being a little bit tougher in both areas, I do feel like they can improve as a football team. But just speaking from a talent perspective, they're certainly in the upper echelon of football.
Got to agree. They're one of the better teams. The reason I put the Chargers behind the Patriots, though, is because the Patriots beat them in the playoffs. I just don't have that consistency. It's all good.
Okay, sure.
Number 3, I got the Chicago Bears. I look at
Shouldn't the Patriots be number 1 then?
Number 3, I got the Bears here. You look at the team, and you look at the team, and I'm just like, wow. I just really like all of this solid quality talent that brings up this roster, all the stuff that comes together. It feels like a great collective unit. Now, it wasn't all that long ago, 2017, where this team looked like a dumpster fire. This team, John Fox was here. He was not doing a good job. The roster was not that great. There was a lot of things, but as it turned into the 2018 season that we saw, there was a lot of great pieces. And I know a couple of them have left the building, but a lot of them are still there and kicking and doing really, really good. Let's go through it. I think one of the weakest things for me is Mitchell Trubisky. I think he plays fine in some cases, but is also very inconsistent with his work, but is still a moderately fine quarterback for the Bears. You still got Kyle Fuller. You got Kyle Long. Leonard Floyd is really great. Roquan Smith, I think, is going to be a star. Tariq Cohen at his running back position. I mean, he's just as crafty as they come. One of the best in the league. One of the most underrated, I should say. Eddie Jackson is one of the best in the league at his safety position. I mean, he is an interception, a monster. He does well. Did I say Khalil Mack? Because if I didn't, here you go. Khalil Mack, I mean, he's a beast at his position. That's why he was one of the 499s this season. Prince Amukamara, I think, does well at his cornerback job. Akeem Hicks at his defensive tackle position. Bobby Massey at his right tackle position. Their offensive line, I think, does pretty well for what they do. And overall, I just like the namesake of having this team together, and they're all very collective. I don't think Mitch brought up the fact that there wasn't like one big star, but I think it really molds well. You know what I mean? It molds together to fit a really nice team. The defense was the best in football last year. I don't know if they'll be this great this year. I still think they'll be one of the best in the league, but they've got a lot of great talent going forward. Another really young team that has a lot of pieces that can fill in multiple roles. It's not like just a one-hit wonder, one position that's better than anything else, but really great team here. I think they're set up for the future. So I have them here at number 3.
At number 2, I have Dilly Vanilli's Dallas Cowboys. And I think you could probably swap the top 5. I think the top 5 is pretty solid. Mm-hmm. You could probably rank them in any spot. The Dallas Cowboys, I think what I like about the Cowboys is, again, the trenches are very solid. And they don't have too many holes. I don't think there's a position on the Cowboys outside of linebacker where you'd be like, they have the best unit in the league. You wouldn't be like that, but at the same time, you'd also be like,
oh, sorry.
You know what? They don't really have anything that's no, that's not very good. Safety position is their worst position on their team. But at the same time, I don't think it's horrible. It's not like the Chiefs' corners. Their corners are pretty good. Byron Jones, Awuzie, and Brown and Lewis are pretty solid. Good depth there as well. And they fit the scheme well, especially Byron Jones elevated his game to the next level with Richard in there as the secondary / defensive whatever coach he is, because they have 2 defensive coordinators. Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch are the best linebacking duo in the league. And then you have Sean Lee behind that. If you need to step in, he's still a good linebacker, would be a starter on basically every other team in the league. Then you look at Robert Quinn, I don't think he's going to breakout's not the right word because he's already done that, but kind of resurgence to his career. I think he'll have a good season this year. I think he'll have the best season he's had in a while. And I don't think he's been as bad as some people want to claim. Christian Covington, I think, was a nice little pickup. They need to see something more out of Taco Charlton, as he was a first-round pick. But, he's still a first-round talented player that is a backup. So that's not bad. Antoine Woods is kind of underrated. So is Malik Collins. They have underrated defensive tackles. Tyron Crawford is in there as well. DeMarcus Lawrence got the big contract. He is ready to go. He's a beast. Offensive line is one of the best in the league, certainly has the potential to be the best this season with Travis Frederick back and Zach Martin. They have Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, and Tyron Smith, who in any season could be the best at their position. Amari Cooper is a number 1 receiver. Randall Cobb is going to be interesting to see how he works out. But the question I have about the Cowboys offense is not just from a scheme perspective, but who's going to be that number 2 receiver? That's my question. Like, outside of Amari Cooper, is it going to be Michael Gallup? Does he step up? Is it going to be Randall Cobb? Or is Jason Witten going to have to play a bigger role? Actually, it will probably be Zeke because he's a beast. Dak's good. I don't think they have a great backup quarterback, but that's kind of nitpicking. And they don't really have a great backup running back, but that's also a little nitpicking when Zeke plays as much as he does. You would like to have a good backup running back in case Zeke gets hurt, but it is what it is. And we always say that the Cowboys don't have the greatest coaching, especially offensively. We'll see what Kellen Moore gives them. I'm excited for that. But head coaching wise, Jason Garrett's probably average in the NFL. Defensive wise, though, Marinelli, Richard, they're underrated. I think they do a good job. But yeah, overall, good team. Not a lot of weaknesses. Some superstars, whether it's Zeke or Cooper or Lawrence or Byron Jones or Jalen Smith. They have enough superstars coupled with enough depth that I would place them at number 2.
Now I get to love on my team because the number 2 is the Dallas Cowboys. I really like this roster. What I've said for the last for the last 2 years is that the coaching is the biggest issue. And now our offensive coordinator's gone. We'll see what Kellen Moore does. But this is time for the talent. Let's look at the talent here that I have to say a little bit different. I think our offensive line, you look at it. First of all, Frederick and Tyron Smith or Zach Martin were the highest rated offensive linemen in the game, both of them. Frederick didn't play last year. I think he'll come in here. We'll see what he does. He was still the best center in the game when he was healthy, so we'll see what it comes into in 2019. He's still a great center, and Zach Martin is fantastic. Tyron Smith, when he's healthy, that's the biggest thing, is really good. The biggest issue for me at the offensive line is not Leo Collins, it's actually Connor Williams, because they drafted a left guard in Connor McGovern to be like, hey, you need to step up because he didn't have a great 2018 campaign. So he needs to step up. Otherwise, that offensive line was tremendous. Zeke Elliott, what do I got to say? He's the first or second best running back in the league, depending on who you talk to. No discussion about it. He puts in the role. He puts in a lot of effort for the Cowboys, has to do a lot of work for them, and he gets the job done. He needs to get a little bit more red zone production. That was just, I think, because the scheme of the offensive coordinating, maybe Kellen Moore will get him more opportunities. So that's a big thing for me, but he is number 1, number 2, number 3 at worst in the running back department. Dak Prescott got absolutely disrespected with his 81 ranking in Madden, but is still a good quarterback that knows what he's doing. If you watch the tape, you watch the footage, you will say that the same thing. I know there's a lot of Cowboys haters out there, but you look at what Dak Prescott did, and I think he is a solid quarterback. Maybe not deserving of the money that he's going to be asking for, but still gets the job done in really critical situations. I think he's one of the more clutch quarterbacks in the game. Amari Cooper stood out in 2018 with his second half campaign. He did a fantastic job, and I think he solidified himself in that role. I think he's really more energized more than ever. That second role, I think, is going to stand out with Michael Gallup. I think he's going to have a really good 2019. I think he's going to break out. They gave him more opportunities in the last 5 or 6 games of the year, and I think he stood out. Had a couple of really good touchdowns, I believe, especially against that Eagles game. I think that's when he started to come out, the second one. And I think they're going to use him a little bit more often. So I like that. Randall Cobb will be interesting. I don't really know how he fits in this role in the Cowboys. If he's going to
be slot receiver.
Okay, I know what position he's. Yeah, I know he's going to be a slot receiver, but I don't know how many receptions he's going to get. Maybe in the
It depends how many games the guy plays.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confused with what's going to happen there. But I like Randall Cobb. You know what I mean? Like he's a solid receiver. It just depends on what we're going to do.
I'm hoping that Cobb can be healthy because I want to see if he can kind of make a little bit of a comeback.
Yeah, who doesn't have a good comeback? You know what I'm saying? So if he comes in here and plays great, awesome. I would love to see it. Get a little bit of exceeding expectations for me. So there you go. That's what I feel about the offense. The defense, it's loaded with depth and really good talent. DeMarcus Lawrence, we gave him the contract. He deserves it 100%. He's a great defensive end. Malik Collins, Antoine Woods, Tyrone Crawford. These guys are really underrated pieces to that defensive line that a lot of people don't know about, but definitely do their jobs pretty well. Taco Charlton is one of my least favorite players on this team because he hasn't stepped up in his first 2 years. But I'm always willing to give people chances. He's on my Cowboys team. He's got to step it up here in year 3. But it does take it down. Robert Quinn was pretty, in my opinion, a pretty solid addition.
An X factor.
An X factor, if you will. The linebacker duo. First of all, you got Sean Lee, pretty much just the backup linebacker, which is insane to me, right? Because he was so great for that 2010s campaign. If he was healthy, that's the big thing. Sean Lee, there you go. But LVE, Jalen Smith, the best linebacker duo in the game. They absolutely tore it up in 2018. And their red zone defense was tremendous, based on part because of these guys right here. And then their secondary. Byron Jones stepped up to a whole nother level. I don't know who decided to put him at safety. It didn't work out. His cornerback work in 2018 was a top 5, in my opinion. I think it was like he was the number 5 best corner last year. So he did really well. My least favorite player on this team is Jeff Heath. So if there's one guy I can totally say that I do not like, it is Jeff Heath. I wish we would replace him. I do not think he's worth it. But there's other guys on this team. Xavier Woods, for a 5th-round pick in 2017, has done pretty solid. All things
not
considered.
the wrestler,
not the wrestler Xavier Woods. No, not Mr. Austin Creed, but Xavier Woods himself. Chidobe Awuzie, I thought was actually going to have the standout year last year instead of Byron Jones, but maybe he stands out a little bit more. He still did pretty well. Anthony Brown, he's got pieces. He's got room to grow. Again, a 6th-round pick in 2016, still not bad. And we did George Iocca for pretty cheap. I mean, I don't think he's great, but he adds a little bit of depth for that. So, yeah, I mean, just a lot of really great pieces that I obviously like enjoying them every single week in the NFL. I watch them on a consistent basis. They're my favorite team. But even if you're going to say,
really? I didn't know that.
I don't know, bro. Even if you're going to say I'm a home or whatever, you got to look at this team and realize that there is a lot of talent here. There's a lot of great pieces. And to me, the biggest flaw for the last 3 seasons has been coaching. So there you go. We'll have to
Unfortunately, Dylan, the number 1 most talented team is in the same division.
They are honestly in the same division, which
Ed, this is funny because you know how I did the strongest position group in the NFL? I found it hard not to put the Eagles on almost every single list.
Yeah, they're pretty strong in a lot of areas.
They're very good. Okay, so we look at the wide receivers. They have Alshon Jeffrey. They added Deshaun Jackson. They have Nelson Aguilar. And then they add a 2nd-rounder, Arcega Whiteside. I always mess his name up. Shelton Gibson, Braxton Miller, Mac Hollins. That's like 7 receivers deep. Okay.
Pretty good. That's pretty good start.
But what I like about their receiving core is they have a jump ball guy in Alshon Jeffrey, a speed guy in Deshaun Jackson, and a slot guy in Nelson Aguilar. Perfect combination.
Boom.
Jason Peters, still great, Hall of Fame tackle. But then what do? Oh, hey, we're so stacked. Let's just draft the 1st-round tackle because whatevs. Andrew Dillard's their backup. Best pass blocker in the draft. They have Samalu's probably their weakest player, definitely on their offensive line. But behind him, they have Wisniewski, who was a starter for many seasons. Jason Kelsey's probably the best center in the league. Brandon Brooks is an elite guard, and Lane Johnson is probably the 2nd best right tackle. Yep. Zach Ertz is a top 3 tight end. Dallas Goedert's a top 3 backup tight end. Carson Wentz is really good. They don't have Nick Foles anymore, but Nate Sudfeld, I've said I don't mind him. And they drafted Clayton Thorson as their 3rd string, which I don't even know if he'll make the team because they're so stacked. Jordan Howard is there as their pure running back. Miles Sanders, I really liked coming out of the draft. He can do a little bit of everything, and I do expect him to be the starter, so to speak, even though this team has so many look at all their running backs. They have Jordan Howard, Miles Sanders, Corey Clement, Wendell Smallwood, Josh Adams, Boston Scott, Danielle Pumphrey, and Darren Sproles.
Jesus.
I don't know how these guys are going to make the team. If I was the Cowboys, I would watch their games and then just pick up whoever they cut.
Yeah, whoever's getting cut in the preseason. Let's go. Let's get them on.
Defensive line, they have a top 5 defensive player in Fletcher Cox. They have Malik Jackson. He's in the fold now, basically replacing Michael Bennett. Brandon Graham is still a very good D-end. I don't think he's as good as he used to be, but he's still very good. Derek Barnett, this should be his breakout year this year. It should be. Should. Hassan Ridgeway, they just got for like a 6th or whatever, but he's a good player. Timmy Jernigan, we know he's a good player. Vinny Curry, hey, why don't you come back? Because you didn't work out for the Bucs.
Why not?
Why not? Josh Sweat's very talented. Trayvon Hester is good. Like the fact that I know all these players is impressive. I'm like 4 players deep. I know a lot of players, but I'm just saying, like, look at this roster. It's ridiculous. Linebackers, they added Zach Brown because, why not? Nigel Bradham's good. Grugier Hill is, I feel like kind of had a good season last year in replacement for Jordan Hicks. 2 seasons ago, I think he played a lot. I can't remember if it's last year or 2 seasons ago. But, yeah, he's not a bad player for a player that was supposed to be like a special teamer. Actually turned out to be a little bit more than that. And Paul Werlow has been a starter elsewhere. And LJ Fort, same thing, used to be a starter for Pittsburgh. So those are 2 quality backups. Jalen Mills, Ronald Darby, Sidney Jones, Avonte Maddox, who started last year at the end of the year. Cravon LeBlanc also started at the end of last year. Rasul Douglas, same thing. So, like, the thing about their corners is this is their weakest position on their team, but they have, like, 7 players that have played starting roles on their team, which they just can pick the best players and play them at any time. I do think that Ronald Darby has the potential to be the best, but it's usually been Jalen Mills for the most part. Yeah. Malcolm Jenkins and Rodney McLeod are a good combination, and Andrew Sendeo is their 3rd safety, and of course he's had success in the NFL for the Vikings. I just went through their whole roster. They do not have any holes. Like I said, I think their corner position is the weakest, but I don't think it's weak by any means. If I had to rank it across the NFL, it's probably like 20th. It's not like one of the top 5 worst, but it's not one of the top 5 best. And yeah, I mean, they're loaded. The Eagles are the most talented team. I continue to say it over and over. And if you tell me in the comment section they are not, I don't know what you are thinking.
As much as it hurts inside, you got to understand that there is talent there, and they're the number 1 most loaded team. I'm going to go through it quickly because Mitch brought up most of the points, and he went through the entire roster. The receivers are just so talented in how they can all – go in different directions. Alshon's a different kind of receiver or possession guy. Deshaun Jackson's your deep threat and your speed guy. Nelson Aguilar's a slot. Or Siga Whiteside, I think, has a lot of upside and potential. Offensive line is crazy good. Besides their left guard, I think they're so freaking talented here. And then they just decided to draft Andre Dillard to replace Jason Peters for the future. Fantastic. Carson Wentz, I think the question about him is his health, which is their X factor this year, but he is a quarterback himself. He's still a really good talent. Zach Ertz had 116 receptions. I mean, what do you want to do? And then they got running back talent for freaking years. Defensively, I think their cornerbacks are kind of weak, as Mitch brought up. It's not the worst in the league, but they still actually play pretty decently. If you look at the divisional round, I think they stepped up in decent ways. It just kind of came down to that last game decision. Or that drop, whatever. But in terms of their defensive line, one of the best in the game, no doubt about it. Derek Barnett, he made the great straight fumble in his rookie year in Super Bowl 52 against the Patriots. So he's made plays, but I need to see him in the starting role. I still think he'll do well. Fletcher Cox, what can I say about him? And the depth that this team has is tremendous. Now, as a Cowboys fan, I'll make my comment that we did beat them twice last year. But I will say, as a talented roster, you can't say anything else. I said it about this earlier. I said the Dolphins were the least talented team, and the Eagles are the most talented team. You got to look at it as all sides, every single piece put together. They are the most talented team in football. I don't know if Mitch is going to come back here, but I'll end off this section. There we go.
There's nothing else that needs to be said.
There's nothing else. So that is it for our top 10 most talented teams in the NFL. If you guys enjoyed in the solo video, smash the like button, comment below your most talented teams, and your number 1 better be the Eagles, and subscribe to the channel.